Hello, this is Dr. Michael Myers, and I'm course lead faculty for BST 322 Biostatistics at National University in San Diego, California. In this short video, I'm going to give you an introduction to how we use StatCrunch to make histograms, calculate z-scores, frequency distributions, and the like. So in this example, I've already opened up the StatCrunch software, and what we want to do here is, if we use an example, here's one from a discussion board that I used during the first week of my class. So here's an example of where we made some med students jump up and down for a minute, right? Then we measure their heart rate. So the values are what you see here, and so we have 25 data points to put in. The question is, how do we find the mean, the mode, the standard deviation, which was what we call descriptive statistics, and then how are we going to graph this data and make a frequency distribution and also evaluate the second part, where we have a student who says his rate is 127 and he's in better shape and we've got to compute a z-score. So first off, in StatCrunch it's very easy to do descriptive statistics. So calculating the mean, the mode, we can do a lot of these things by hand, but as our data sets get larger, we want to have the software do it for us, or we can do both and check our answer. So StatCrunch, what we can do is we can import this data. I've already put this into an Excel spreadsheet, or you can just type it into the columns here. But if we want to import data, we can just go to load data from a file, and I'll pick that from my computer where I've downloaded the file to. And this will be the data for an example that I do typically in my class in the first week of discussion. So we just click on that, and that'll load the data into StatCrunch. And we simply scroll down and click on Load File. And it should import it, which it does. It even puts a variable there for us as heart rate. So again, here are the values that you saw on the screen. And again, you can pause this recording at any time if you want to catch up with us. So here's the first 15 student values. If we scroll down, we see that the last 25 are there. So these are all the heart rates that are now put into the StatCrunch sheet for us. And again, we could have typed these in as well. Okay, so first off, to do descriptive statistics is very easy. We just click on the Stat tab, and we're going to go to Summary Stats, and we just click Columns because that's what we want to analyze. And a little dialog box pops up here. We just simply select the heart rate. That's what we want to analyze, and we can click Next if we want to select which ones we want. So this will select for you just by clicking these on and off. Again, these are the quartiles, a lot of the stuff you read about in your textbook, and you can kind of select these on and off depending on what you want. But here we want to have the standard deviation. We can worry about the standard error later in the class, but for now we'll do the standard deviation. Here's the median, the range, and so forth is all here for you. So here we just go and we click Calculate from here, and the software prints out for us the median, the mean, the standard deviation, the variance, all we need for our descriptive statistics. And again, we could have clicked on any of these as we want to analyze. Click on Options, and you can simply copy these. Then you can just paste them into a Word document if you like. So if we bring in some Word, we can just right-click and paste that in, or just Control-V. And we have our summary statistics that we can put into a report if we like. So StatCrunch very easily does descriptive statistics for you. Okay, so now the problem becomes, well, how do we analyze this data? Well, one way we do it right is we look at what's called frequency distributions, or a frequency table. Well, StatCrunch can do that very easily for you. Again, with the Stat tab, you're going to click on Tables. In this case, we want to create a frequency table. So we want to see what the frequency of this data is. So again, for this table, we just click on our heart rate again, click on Next, and it'll give the counts for us, the relative frequency, the proportion. We can even do percentages of total if we want. And we can change them by ascending or descending. Usually we'll leave these as ascending. We click Calculate, and the software makes a very nice table for us. And again, we can copy and paste this into our Word document for a report if we want to. So this is a frequency distribution of all the values that we have for the students. So you can see that some are more frequent than others. So score of 125 is pretty frequent with 3. These are the percentages we have. The relative frequency is simply the part of the whole, so this 0.04 would be 4%, for example. So this gives you a nice printout for your frequency table. So now how do we make this look like what we see in the textbook, where we have this nice table, as in figure 2.1 here, where you have the frequency, the percent, and the cumulative percent. And so really what we're looking at, if you look into the textbook definitions, we have this idea of absolute frequency, right, which is the frequency, that's the count of each case. We have the relative frequency, which indicates the percentage of times a given value occurs, right? That's our percentage frequency. And we have this thing called cumulative relative frequency, which is the last one we need to do to fill out our table here. That is the one that combines the percentages for the given score plus all that preceded it. So that's pretty easily done in we can do it by hand, or we can do it in a spreadsheet program like Excel. So what we want to do first is let's just go to options and we'll copy this table, right? And we can just paste it into Word. And now we have our table of heart rate here. And what we want to do then is create another column for the cumulative frequency. So that's easily done in Word. We just go, again, we right click in that column and we're going to insert columns to the right. That gives us another column here, and we're going to call that cumulative frequency. So we can just copy this one over and call this cumulative frequency. And of course, cumulative frequency is going to be the frequency that's there plus the one before it. So the first one is going to be our 4%. And the next one is going to be the next value 4 plus the last one, which is 8, right? And we can do that by hand. We can keep going and fill that out for the table. If you have a long table or more complicated data, you can actually get Excel to copy this for you. So what you can do is you can just go to that table, right click and copy it, open up Excel, and then in Excel you can just go to that first cell in the spreadsheet, just right click and now paste it. So all we're doing is pasting our table from Word into Excel, and we can write a very simple formula for that cumulative frequency. So then to calculate this in Excel with a formula, again, it's going to be the cumulative frequency is the value before. So that's going to be this number 4 here, 4%, plus the next one. So in the next one we're going to write a formula and we're going to put in the equals. So that would be equal to the one before, right? Plus the current value, so the 4 plus 4. And hit return. So that returns our 8, and then we can just copy that down by selecting the cells beneath it, going up and clicking on Fill Down. And now you see it's calculated all the cumulative frequencies for us. And again, the last one should be 100%, right? Because that's 100. That's adding up all the values in a cumulative fashion. So this is a very quick way. You can get Excel to then do the cumulative frequencies, or you can do them by hand. And again, the same thing, we can drag over this, select it, right click, we can copy it, go back to our Word document, and just paste that in. And now here we have our cumulative frequency tables for heart rate. Again, with our heart rate, our frequency, the relative frequency in both proportions and percent, and our cumulative frequency all ready to go into our assignment or our final project or any other output we want to put it into. Well, looking at this table is not really instructive, so a lot of times in statistics what we do is we graph the data. So to graph this, since this is heart rate data, which is continuous, right? We can have values 99, 100, 101 that can be continuous. We're going to make a histogram for this data. So we'll just close this out, and now we're going to go to graphics, and to create a histogram we'll simply click on the histogram, and we have a few options here. Again, we're going to click on the heart rate because that's what we're interested in, and we click on next to keep going for the graph. So again, we're going to do a frequency type histogram. So we're going to look at the frequency of these values. We can start our bins anywhere we want, but for now we can just default them. We can change all this later if we like. And the next one, we can also overlay the density curve. So in the density curve we can pick something like the normal curve. So we can overlay the normal curve and see if it follows a normal distribution. Then we just click on next, and we can label our axes here. So we can put in our X and Y. These are also labeled by default, but we can put in the X is going to be our heart rate. We can put a Y-axis label, so here this would be frequency. And title, we can do this one rates after jumping or after exercise, whatever we want to make the title. We can put in our grid lines if we want, or we can leave those off, both for vertical and horizontal. We can also do multiple graphs if we want to put more data on this. So we can do all these kind of labels here. We can change our graph layout as much as we want. We can do change our color scheme if we want, and when we're done we just click on Create Graph. So easily StatCrunch makes this histogram for you. You can actually reshape it to make it look a little bit better. If we want to change the font or the size of the typing that we see here to make it a little more legible, we can do that very easily by when we create our graph. So we'll go back and create another graph here again by clicking on Graphics. To do that, we can actually go to Edit, and if we want to change those fonts, we can just change the fonts from the Edit button. So when you click on that one, it basically calls up a dialog box that allows you to change the font sizes. So for graphics, we can make those a little larger, probably 22 is a good one, and we can click Update Font. Now when we go back to the Graphics button and we again make our histogram, it'll change the font a little bit, make it a little bit more readable. So again, we'll do our heart rate, and we'll overlay our normal curve, create the graph, and now you see you've got a little bit larger font, which makes a nice labeling for your graph, so you can really see the values that are there. So from options, we can simply copy, and again we can go back to our Word document and we can paste that right into our Word document. So now we have our title, our axes are labeled, and we have a nice graph to put into our report for a statistical analysis of med students after jumping for 1 minute of exercise. So this is again a very easy way for you to get all this data and to put it into a Word document. You can even put this into PowerPoint and create your histogram and overlay it with a normal curve. And you can also create a frequency table very easily from StatCrunch. We can also make frequency tables with categorical data. So say this variable, if we want to put one whether the student smoked or not, we can do the same thing for our frequency table. So let's make this variable smoking, and we can just type this data in. Let's say that most of our students are not smokers. And the software will do the same thing. So if we go to Stats, we can go to Tables, Frequency Table, and now instead of heart rate we select smoking, and we can do the same thing, press Calculate, and now it makes a frequency distribution for our categorical data. So here's our yes or no data, which makes a nice table for us, and again by clicking Options we can copy that data and paste it into our report. Of course, the last thing we have to do with this data set is calculate the Z-score. So of course this is the standard score. In our textbook, the Polite textbook on page 50, you see the formula. The standard score, often called the Z-score, is easy to compute once we have the mean and the standard deviation, and we just calculated that in our StatCrunch. So using those values, we simply plug it into the formula in the textbook. So Z is equal to the score minus the mean divided by the standard deviation, right? We could calculate that by hand, but let's get StatCrunch to do it for us, or we could do both and check our answer. Now in StatCrunch, to do the Z-score, you might be tempted to go and click the Stat button and do a Z statistic, but that's actually going to do a hypothesis test, and as in our textbook, as Polite notes on page 50, that's very complex because you get into, it's really going to do a percentile rank for you. But to simply do the standard score, which gives us an idea of how far away values are from the mean, we're going to actually just go and do that as a function in StatCrunch. So we're going to go to the Data tab instead. We're going to go to the Data tab, and we're going to choose Compute Expression. So we're going to just have StatCrunch do the computation for us. So we click on Compute Expression, and StatCrunch will change and bring up a very detailed dialog box for you, and that's shown here. Let me bring that into frame for you. So all you need to do is you can type in any expression that you want. You can see it's already pulling in some of the columns, but down here it's a basic function, so we'll just scroll down to find the standard function. There's logometric functions, and here's our formula, right? You kind of have to know that from the textbook. So that's on page 50, right? As I said, the value minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So we're going to click on that. So here our y is going to be our column, heart rate, so we'll select that. Leave the x blank because we're only doing the y here, right? We're only doing one variable. Then we click on set expression, and it'll calculate the expression and put it up here for us. So that's our formula for the standard score. And we can even, if I scroll down here a little bit, you can even, when it computes the new column, we can give it a name. So here we'll just call it the standard score or the Z-score. Type that in and we're all good to go. And I'll bring this back into frame, and at the bottom you simply click on compute. It'll compute our expression, tells you the new column was created, and now we have our z-scores for all of our data. So if we look and scroll down to our little fellow with 127, now we have that person's z-score. So again, this is a very easy way to get StatCrunch to create a z-score for you and compute all of the descriptive statistics, and also to do any histogram or graphing you have to do with this data.